welcome back. Quick thoughts. We have a subscriber, Dave, who had some questions learning bulbs, mainly talking about I and J, and particularly talking about shift, which is a really hard concept for a lot of new programmers to get. In a lot of my early videos, I kind of talk about I and J being variables. I try to reinforce the thought that I and J don't have to be I and J. They can be whatever you name them. You could call them dogs and cats. You could say int dog equals 0, int cat equal whatever. I and J just represent a bucket of sorts. A computer doesn't know what things are, so when you're programming, you have to declare them. We declare them with I as a constant throughout this course. And just because J follows I in the alphabet, we declare the next bit as J. The variable, however, can be whatever you want to name it. We name them I and J throughout this course, and I kind of stick with that theme, but it's not important that they be I and J. What's important is understanding the concept that when you do int I or int J, all you're doing is declaring the variable, which is why in this code here, int J equal bits and bytes minus 1 semicolon J, we keep talking about J. Now we're only talking about J as a variable, as if it's the person named J. So we're talking about int J as a human is equal to bits and bytes minus 1, and then when J, the human, is less than or equal to 0 in this case, then J subtract. So the idea of a letter as a variable is a bucket or a person. It's just something that you're declaring to the computer that is a variable we are going to be using, and anytime we recall J or we recall I in that loop, we're saying, hey, remember this guy? We're bringing him back. We're bringing her back. We're bringing it back. We're bringing back the dog or the cat. Whatever we brought here, we said, hey, this is this. And when we call it back, we're saying, hey, remember this thing? We're using it again. So I and J are just representative of variables. You could declare them. You could call them whatever you want. We just use I and J in this course just because it's kind of a programming thing. When you start declaring variables, you tend to go down a list. That's how they work out in this. Now, in a more complex issue, we have shifting. This is a very difficult concept to understand. It's going to be more of a concept you have to accept. The understanding is much deeper level, in my opinion, in coding in C, and particularly is not going to be valuable necessarily moving forward, but shifting is complex. So in a program, when we shift something, we're trying to move bits, right? So a computer reads things as zeros and ones. That's it. So everything's in binary. It's either 0 or 1, or if we have them, in this case, bulbs, a light switch is either on or off. It can only be one of those two things. So when we move the positions either left or right, the bit at either end, say this one's on, this will go off, and the next one will go on. And if we go this way, this will go on and this one will go off. So the reason we're shifting these bits left and right, or left or right, is that because everything's represented in ones or zeros, or on or off, in order to read the bits, we need to know which ones are on and off, which we can do by dividing by 2. If we divide it by 2 and there's no remainder, we have 0, right? So let's call that off. If we divide by 2 and there is a remainder, we have 1, so we'll call that on. And when we shift these bits one direction or the other, we can find out in the most simplistic form how we're dividing by 2 whether that bit is on or off. And then if it's a switch, or a 1 or a 0, if it's a switch for these bulbs, we can turn that bulb on or off, and we can do that for all 8 bits, and because that's how many bits are going to be in the binary code, then we will actually extract the on-off bits for that light bulb and switch them into the proper position of on or off, therefore representing the stage of light bulbs on or off, which gives us the result that we need. So we take the 8 bits and we shift them, basically dividing them by 2 and figuring out if that bit is on or off, the 10, 10, 10, whatever it is. And once we find out whether it's on or off, we represent that in the bulbs, which is then telling a computer in binary, or telling a human in binary, what's listed there. Shift is a pretty difficult concept. Don't feel bad if you don't get it. Remember that in coding, particularly in C, and I think David goes over this, is that not everything's going to make sense. Some things are going to be a matter of accepting. You know, when we do equals equals or exclamation point equals, we don't really know. We weren't there at the beginning to say, well, why wasn't it just equals? Why is it equals equals? Some of the things that exist in coding are just presets that we don't get to understand, we just have to accept. So if you think of it more in those terms, like you just accept that this is the way things are done, sometimes it's easier to understand the reason behind those rather than understanding the reasons of the why. I hope that makes sense. So anyways, good luck. That was a real quick recap of bulbs, going over variables and shifting. Hopefully that helps out. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'm happy to do videos like this. Appreciate your support. Hang in there. We'll see you soon.